The morning sun cast long shadows through the tall glass windows of Morgan Towers, creating patterns on the polished marble floor. 12-year-old Tanya Williams sat quietly in one of the plush lobby chairs, her legs swinging back and forth as she waited for her mother to finish the morning cleaning duties. Her dark braids, neatly done with purple beads at the ends, clicked softly with each movement. This was their morning routine. Every day before school, Tanya would spend an hour in the lobby of the city's most expensive building while her mother, Sarah Williams, worked as part of the cleaning staff. Most days were the same, boring but peaceful, but today felt different. Today, Tanya felt a strange feeling in her stomach, like butterflies dancing nervously. Since she was very young, Tanya had always known things that others didn't. She could sense when someone was lying, or when bad things were about to happen. Her mother called it a blessing from God, but sometimes it felt more like a heavy responsibility. Today, that feeling was stronger than ever. The lobby began to fill with the usual morning crowd, men and women in expensive suits, carrying leather briefcases and talking importantly on their phones. Tanya watched them all, her bright brown eyes taking in every detail. She noticed how the security guards stood straighter when certain people walked by, and how others seemed to demand attention just by being there. At exactly 8:30 a.m., the main entrance doors swished open, and James Harrison walked in. Everyone knew who he was. His face was on magazines and TV shows, and his technology company had made him one of the richest men in the world. He was tall and handsome, with silver-streaked black hair and kind eyes that crinkled at the corners when he smiled. Unlike many other rich people who came through those doors, Mr. Harrison always nodded hello to the security guards and held doors open for others. But today, he wasn't alone. Walking beside him was a woman Tanya had never seen before. She was beautiful in a way that reminded Tanya of the dangerous sirens she had read about in mythology books, attractive but somehow threatening. The woman wore a red dress that seemed to flow like water when she moved, and her high heels clicked sharply against the marble floor. Her smile was perfect, too perfect, like a mask hiding something underneath. "James, darling," the woman said, her voice sweet like honey, but with something else in it that made Tanya's skin crawl. "I got your favorite coffee, vanilla latte with an extra shot of espresso." Tanya watched as the woman, Victoria Chase, she heard someone whisper, handed Mr. Harrison a paper coffee cup from an expensive cafe down the street. The moment Victoria's perfectly manicured hands touched the cup, Tanya felt it. A wave of darkness, of bad intentions, hit her so hard she nearly fell out of her chair. Images flashed through her mind. Victoria in a dark room, adding something to the coffee when no one was looking. Victoria making phone calls late at night, speaking in codes. Victoria looking at papers with Mr. Harrison's name on them, smiling that terrible smile. Tanya's heart began to race. She could see Mr. Harrison bringing the cup to his lips, thanking Victoria with a warm smile. He didn't know. He couldn't see what Tanya saw, the shadow behind Victoria's eyes, the evil hiding behind her beautiful face. Without thinking about the consequences, without considering that she was just a 12-year-old girl in a building full of important adults, Tanya jumped up from her chair. Her mother had always taught her to be respectful, to stay quiet, to not draw attention to herself in places like this. But some things were more important than rules. Her purple-beaded braids bounced wildly as she ran across the lobby. Security guards turned their heads, and people stopped their conversations to stare. Tanya could hear her own heartbeat in her ears, could feel the urgency pushing her forward. The coffee cup was inches from Mr. Harrison's lips now. Time seemed to slow down as Tanya reached them. She could see everything clearly, the surprise in Mr. Harrison's eyes, the flash of anger on Victoria's face, the steam rising from the coffee cup that held something much more dangerous than just coffee. Taking a deep breath, Tanya did the only thing she could think of to save the kind billionaire's life. She opened her mouth to shout the words that would change everything. "Don't drink that." Everything happened in seconds. Tanya's small hands knocked the coffee cup from James Harrison's grasp, sending it flying through the air. The dark liquid splashed across the pristine marble floor, creating a brown stain that spread like spilled ink. The empty cup rolled to a stop near a potted plant, leaving a trail of drops behind it. The lobby fell silent. Everyone stopped moving, as if someone had pressed pause on a video. Then Victoria Chase's voice cut through the silence like a knife. "Security. Get this child out of here immediately." Her perfect red lips twisted in anger, her designer heels, stepping back to avoid the spreading coffee puddle. Do you have any idea how much that coffee cost? Two security guards rushed forward, their faces serious. One of them, Officer Martinez, who had always given Tanya friendly smiles in the morning, looked confused and uncomfortable as he approached her. But before he could reach her, James Harrison raised his hand, stopping them. "Wait," he said, his voice calm but firm. His eyes were fixed on Tanya's face, studying her with careful attention. "Young lady, why did you do that?" Tanya stood her ground, even though her knees were shaking. She could feel everyone's eyes on her, the curious onlookers, the worried security guards, and worst of all, Victoria's cold, angry stare that made her feel like she was freezing from the inside. "The coffee," Tanya said, her voice smaller than she wanted it to be. She cleared her throat and tried again, standing straighter. "The coffee isn't safe, Mr. Harrison." "She?" Tanya pointed at Victoria, whose face had gone pale under her perfect makeup. "She put something bad in it." Victoria let out a laugh that sounded like breaking glass. "This is ridiculous. James, darling, surely you're not going to listen to some cleaning lady's daughter. This is clearly a bid for attention, or worse, maybe an attempt to get money from you." But James Harrison wasn't looking at Victoria. He was still watching Tanya, and there was something in his eyes, a mix of curiosity and concern that gave her courage. "How do you know this?" he asked quietly, kneeling down so he was at eye level with her. It was something adults rarely did, and it made Tanya feel like she was being taken seriously. I just know," Tanya said, struggling to explain her gift. "I can feel when people want to hurt others. And when she touched the coffee cup, I saw." She paused, wondering if she should tell them about the visions she had seen. "I saw her putting something in it when you weren't looking." Victoria's face changed for just a second, a flash of something dark and angry that confirmed everything Tanya had felt, but it disappeared so quickly that only Tanya seemed to notice. "This is absurd," Victoria said, reaching for James's arm. "We're going to be late for the board meeting, darling. Let security handle this little situation." But James Harrison gently pulled away from Victoria's grasp. He turned to Officer Martinez instead. "Please collect what's left of the coffee. All of it. And the cup too." His voice was firm, leaving no room for argument. "I want it tested." Victoria's perfect smile cracked just a little. "James, you can't be serious. Testing the coffee? Because of some child's wild imagination?" "Better safe than sorry," James said simply. He turned back to Tanya, who was still standing brave despite her racing heart. "What's your name, young lady?" "Tanya Williams, sir. My mom is Sarah Williams. She works here." James nodded thoughtfully. Then he did something that surprised everyone. He smiled at Tanya and held out his hand. "Thank you, Tanya Williams. Whether your warning turns out to be necessary or not, you showed great courage today. That's something I admire." Tanya shook his hand, feeling relief wash over her. But when she glanced at Victoria, she saw something that made her blood run cold. Behind Victoria's fake smile and angry eyes, there was a promise. This wasn't over. As the crowd began to disperse and cleaning staff came to mop up the spilled coffee, Tanya couldn't help but wonder what would happen next. She had stopped the immediate danger, but somehow she knew this was just the beginning. Victoria Chase wasn't the type of person to give up easily, and now her dangerous attention was focused on Tanya. 3 days had passed since the coffee incident in the lobby. Tanya sat in her usual chair, but things felt different now. Security guards watched her more closely, some with respect, others with suspicion. Her mother had been worried sick about her actions, but hadn't lost her job as Tanya had feared. In fact, Sarah Williams had been mysteriously moved to the executive floor cleaning staff, a promotion that came with better hours and higher pay. Tanya knew this wasn't a coincidence. James Harrison was behind it, and she had seen him watching her from across the lobby several times since that day. He tried to be subtle about it, but Tanya noticed everything. Just like she noticed Victoria Chase's new routine. Every morning at exactly 9:15 a.m., Victoria would enter through the side door instead of the main entrance. She would take the service elevator to the parking garage, where she would meet with different people, always in expensive suits, always looking nervous. Tanya saw all this because she had started arriving earlier with her mother, hiding behind pillars and plants to watch. Today was different though. As Tanya pretended to read her book, She saw Mr. Harrison's private security chief, a serious-looking man named Marcus Chen, walking toward her. He stopped in front of her chair, his face friendly but professional. "Miss Williams," he said quietly, "Mr. Harrison would like to speak with you. Your mother has already given permission." Tanya's heart jumped, but she tried to stay calm. She followed Marcus to a private elevator she had never been allowed to use before. It opened directly into Mr. Harrison's office on the 50th floor, a huge room with windows that seemed to touch the sky. James Harrison was sitting behind a large desk, looking at some papers. But what caught Tanya's attention was the large screen on the wall showing security camera footage. Footage of Victoria's secret meetings in the parking garage. "Ah, Tanya," Mr. Harrison said, standing up to greet her. "Thank you for coming. Please, sit down." He gestured to a comfortable chair across from his desk. "The coffee tests came back yesterday," he continued, his face serious. "You were right. They found traces of a rare poison, something that would have made me very sick slowly, over many weeks. It would have looked like natural causes." Tanya nodded, not surprised but still scared. "She's still planning something," she said quietly. "I can feel it." Mr. Harrison leaned forward. "Tell me what you've seen." So Tanya told him everything, about Victoria's new routine, the mysterious meetings, the way she always checked her phone at exactly 3:15 p.m. and would step out to make calls that made her angry. As she spoke, Marcus typed everything into a tablet. "There's something else," Tanya added, remembering something important. "Yesterday, I saw her drop something in the parking garage. It looked like a business card, but when I got closer, it had strange symbols on it. I took a picture with my phone." She pulled out her old phone and showed them the photo. Both men's eyes widened. The card had a symbol that looked like a black spider with a red hourglass. "The Black Widow Network," Marcus whispered, looking at Mr. Harrison with concern. "Sir, this confirms our suspicions. They're an international group that—" Mr. Harrison held up his hand, glancing at Tanya. "Perhaps we should discuss those details privately." But Tanya wasn't done. "She's not working alone," she said firmly. "There's a man who meets her every Thursday. He wears a blue suit with gold cufflinks shaped like snakes. And," she hesitated, then continued, "I think he works in this building. I've seen him on the 48th floor." James Harrison and Marcus exchanged looks. "Robert Nash," Marcus said, "head of financial operations." "Tanya," Mr. Harrison said seriously, "what you're doing is very brave, but it could also be dangerous. These people, they're not good people. They've hurt others before." "I know," Tanya said, thinking of Victoria's cold eyes. "But my gift. My mom says if God gives you a way to help people, you have to use it, even if it's scary." Mr. Harrison smiled, but his eyes were worried. "We'll protect you and your mother. But I need you to be very careful. Don't let Victoria know you're watching her. And if you see anything else suspicious, tell Marcus immediately. Can you do that?" Tanya nodded, feeling both scared and important. As she left the office to return to the lobby, she didn't know that Victoria Chase was watching her from the building across the street. Her red lips curved in a dangerous smile as she dialed a number on her phone. The game was about to become much more dangerous. The laboratory results landed on James Harrison's desk with a quiet thud. Marcus Chen stood by the window, his face grim as he watched his boss read through the detailed report. Outside, the sky was growing dark with storm clouds, matching the mood in the office. "Sir," Marcus said, "the poison they found. It's the same one used in 3 other cases last year. All billionaires, all dead within 2 months of showing symptoms." James Harrison rubbed his temples, thinking about how close he had come to being the 4th victim. And all of them had new romantic interests in their lives shortly before their deaths. "Yes, sir. All beautiful women, all disappeared after the deaths were ruled as natural causes." Marcus paused, then added, "And all of them had connections to the Black Widow network." Meanwhile, 12 floors below, Tanya sat in a small security room, watching video footage from the building's cameras. Mr. Harrison had given her special permission to help, trusting her unusual gift to spot things others might miss. Officer Martinez sat with her, both as protection and to document anything she noticed. "Stop," Tanya suddenly said, pointing at the screen. Go back 10 seconds. The footage rewound, showing Victoria in the parking garage again. This time, she was talking to Robert Nash, the man with the snake cufflinks, but something was different. Look at her necklace, Tanya said. It's not the same one she usually wears. This one has a small red crystal, and she squinted at the screen. She keeps touching it while they talk. Officer Martinez zoomed in on the footage. The necklace appeared to light up faintly every time Victoria touched it. It could be a recording device, he said, quickly noting this detail in his tablet. Suddenly, Tanya felt a chill run down her spine. Her gift was warning her again. Someone's coming, she whispered. Someone who shouldn't be here. They barely had time to turn off the screens before the door opened. Robert Nash stood there, his expensive suit perfectly pressed and his snake cufflinks glinting in the fluorescent light. Well, he said, his smile not reaching his eyes. What do we have here? A security guard and a little girl watching old security footage. How? Interesting. Officer Martinez stood up, placing himself between Nash and Tanya. This is a restricted area, Mr. Nash. Even you need special clearance to be here. Oh, I have clearance, Nash said smoothly, holding up an access card. The question is, does she? Before either could respond, Nash's phone buzzed. He checked it, and Tanya caught a glimpse of the screen, a message that made her blood run cold. Plan B initiated. Girl knows too much. After Nash left, Officer Martinez immediately called Marcus Chen. Within minutes, Tanya was being escorted to Mr. Harrison's office through a Secret Service corridor. But as they walked, she couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. In the office, James Harrison was still reviewing documents when they arrived, but these weren't just lab reports anymore. They were files about Victoria Chase's past, or rather, her many pasts. Her real name isn't Victoria Chase, Harrison explained to Tanya, showing her a series of photographs. Each one showed the same woman with different hair colors, different names, different wealthy men by her side, and in each case, the men had died mysteriously. She's like a chameleon, Tanya said, remembering how her mother had taught her that word last week. She changes to trick people. Exactly, Marcus agreed. And she's not working alone. The Black Widow Network has been doing this for years. They find wealthy targets, send in someone like Victoria, and then... He stopped talking as Tanya suddenly grabbed Harrison's arm. Her eyes were wide with fear. Check your phone, she said urgently. Now. Harrison pulled out his phone. There was one new message from an unknown number. It contained only a photo of Sarah Williams, Tanya's mother, unconscious on the floor of a cleaning supply room. The message below the photo was simple. A trade. The evidence for her life. 1 hour. Thunder cracked outside as rain began to fall, and Tanya felt tears in her eyes. But when she looked up at Mr. Harrison, her face was determined. I know where they're keeping her, she said. I can feel it. But we have to hurry. The game had just become deadly serious. Rain pounded against the windows of Morgan Towers as James Harrison's team gathered in a secure conference room on the 51st floor. Tanya sat between Marcus Chen and Officer Martinez, her hands clutched tightly together as she watched Mr. Harrison pace the room. Time was running out. They had only 45 minutes left to save her mother. I know where they're keeping her, Tanya repeated. The old maintenance room on floor 32, the one that's supposed to be locked. She closed her eyes, focusing on the feeling that guided her. Mom is there, and she's scared, but she's awake now. Harrison nodded to Marcus, who immediately sent a team to check, but they had to be careful. If Victoria or Nash suspected they were coming, they might hurt Sarah Williams. While they waited, Harrison pulled up a large screen showing everything they had discovered about the Black Widow Network. Tanya's eyes widened as she saw dozens of photographs, beautiful women, wealthy men, and death certificates. It was like a terrible puzzle finally coming together. They've been operating for 5 years, Harrison explained, his voice tight with anger. They find wealthy targets and study them for months. Everything about their lives, what they like, what they're looking for, their weaknesses. Then they send in someone perfect, someone like Victoria. A woman who becomes exactly what the target wants, Marcus added, clicking through more photos. She learns their schedule, gains their trust, and then they strike. Officer Martinez finished. But it's never just poison, is it? There's more to it. Harrison nodded grimly. The poison is just the first part. While the target is slowly getting sick, they put their real plan in motion. Victoria has been secretly getting me to sign documents, things I thought were routine paperwork, but they were actually transferring my company's assets to offshore accounts. Tanya remembered seeing Victoria bringing papers to Mr. Harrison in the lobby, always with that sweet smile that hid something dark behind it. And Robert Natch helps with this part, she said suddenly, understanding. That's why he's involved. He works in the financial department, so he can make the papers look normal. Smart girl, Harrison said approvingly. Yes, they have people inside many companies. They help create fake documents, hide the money transfers, and make everything look legal. By the time anyone realizes what happened, the target is dead, the money is gone, and the Black Widow has vanished. Suddenly, Marcus's phone buzzed. The security team had reached the 32nd floor. Sir, he said after reading the message, they found Mrs. Williams. She's conscious but weak. They gave her something to make her sleep, but she's going to be okay. Tanya let out a sob of relief, but then her gift kicked in again. Something wasn't right. This was too easy. Wait, she said, standing up. It's a trap. They knew we would find her. They wanted us to find her. Just then, the lights in the building flickered. Emergency alarms began blaring throughout Morgan Towers. Sir, Officer Martinez called from his computer. Someone's hacking our systems. They're trying to lock down the building. Harrison rushed to the window. On the streets below, he could see people hurrying out of the building as the evacuation alarm sounded. But up here, on the top floors, they were trapped. They're not trying to escape, Tanya realized, her voice shaking. They're trying to trap us up here. All the people they want to get rid of, all at once. Harrison's phone rang. Victoria's face appeared on the caller ID. Hello, darling. Her sweet voice purred when he answered on speaker. I hope you're enjoying the show. You have 15 minutes to send Tanya down to the lobby alone, or this building's entire security system will malfunction. Doors will lock, elevators will stop, and certain floors might become uncomfortably hot. She laughed softly. Oh, and James? Those documents you signed last week, they take effect automatically if anything happens to you in the next hour. Isn't corporate law fascinating? The line went dead, leaving them in silence broken only by the sound of rain and distant alarms. Tanya stood up straighter, her young face determined despite her fear. I know what we have to do, she said quietly, and I know how to stop them. You'll have to trust me. The emergency lights cast an eerie red glow through the corridors of Morgan Towers. On the medical floor, Sarah Williams lay in a hospital bed, her eyes full of tears as she gripped her daughter's hand. Tanya had been allowed 5 minutes to see her mother before putting her plan into action. Baby, you can't do this, Sarah whispered, her voice still weak from the drugs Victoria's people had given her. It's too dangerous. Tanya squeezed her mother's hand. I have to, Mama. Sometimes God gives you a gift, and you have to be brave enough to use it. She tried to smile, even though she was scared. Besides, Mr. Harrison's team will be watching everything. They won't let anything bad happen to me. Outside the room, James Harrison stood with Marcus Chen, going over the final details of Tanya's plan. They had 10 minutes left before Victoria's deadline. The building's security systems are still under attack, Marcus reported, checking his tablet. They've locked down the top 20 floors, and the temperature is rising in sections of the building. We've evacuated most people, but they still have control. Harrison nodded grimly. And Robert Nash? Still in his office on the 48th floor, acting like nothing's wrong. He's their inside man. He has to stay in position to complete the financial transfers if... Marcus glanced at Tanya's mother's room, lowering his voice, if anything happens to you. Tanya stepped out of her mother's room, her face serious. For a 12-year-old girl, she looked surprisingly calm, even though she was about to walk into terrible danger. I'm ready, she said. Harrison knelt down to her level. Tanya, you don't have to do this. We can find another way. But Tanya shook her head. My gift isn't just feeling bad things. Sometimes I know exactly what to do to stop them, and right now, I know this is the only way. They took the service elevator down to the lobby level. Through the security cameras, they could see Victoria waiting by the main entrance, looking perfectly calm despite the chaos around her. She wore a blood-red suit today, and her smile was colder than ever. Remember, Marcus said quietly to Tanya, adjusting the tiny earpiece hidden beneath her hair. We'll be watching and listening to everything. The moment you give the signal, we move in. Tanya nodded, touching the simple silver necklace they had given her. It looked ordinary, but it contained a high-tech tracking device and a miniature camera. She took a deep breath and stepped out into the lobby. Victoria's smile widened when she saw Tanya walking toward her alone. Well, the brave little girl who thinks she can stop us. She reached out to touch Tanya's cheek, but Tanya stepped back. Oh, don't be afraid, dear. I just want to have a little chat. I know what you are, Tanya said clearly, making sure the camera and microphone caught everything. I know about the other men you killed, and I know your real name isn't Victoria Chase. Something dangerous flashed in Victoria's eyes, but her smile remained. Clever girl, but knowing things can be very dangerous. Just ask your mother. Oh wait, she's not feeling very well, is she? Tanya felt anger rise in her chest, but she kept her voice steady. You made a mistake this time. You got greedy. 5 billionaires in 1 year? People were bound to notice. Victoria laughed, but there was tension in it now. Notice what? Everything we do is perfectly legal. Every document signed, every transfer authorized. Even now, your friend Mr. Harrison is about to lose everything, and there's nothing anyone can do about it. That's where you're wrong, Tanya said. Her gift was buzzing strongly now, telling her she was on the right path. Because you made another mistake, you forgot about the one person who could prove everything. Victoria's smile faltered slightly. What are you talking about? Tanya took another step forward, her voice stronger. Robert Nash kept records of everything. Every plan, every murder, every dollar stolen. He was your inside man, but he was also your insurance policy. And guess what? She smiled, knowing she had Victoria's full attention now. He just made a deal with the FBI. The color drained from Victoria's perfect face. Her hand moved toward her purse, where Tanya's gift told her a gun was hidden. But before she could reach it, Tanya gave the signal they had planned. Now, Mr. Harrison. She's going for her gun. Chaos erupted in the lobby of Morgan Towers. The moment Tanya gave her signal, security teams emerged from every hidden corner. Victoria's hand had barely touched her purse when Officer Martinez tackled her from behind, sending them both rolling across the marble floor. But Victoria wasn't finished. She was trained for moments like this. With a move like a snake, she slipped from Martinez's grasp and pulled out her gun. The lobby echoed with screams as people dove for cover. Nobody move, Victoria shouted, her perfect mask finally cracking to reveal the dangerous person beneath. She grabbed Tanya, pulling the girl in front of her as a shield. One step closer, and the brave little psychic gets a bullet. James Harrison stepped out from behind a pillar, his hands raised. Let her go, Victoria. It's over. We have everything we need to bring down your entire network. Victoria laughed, but it was a desperate sound. You have nothing. Robert Nash would never betray us. He knows what happens to traitors. You're right, Tanya said calmly, despite the gun pressed against her back. Nash didn't betray you. He didn't have to, because I saw everything in his office last night. 12 hours earlier. Tanya had convinced Harrison's team to let her into Nash's office while he was at a late meeting. Her gift had led her straight to a hidden safe behind a painting of a snake. The combination had come to her like a whisper in her mind. 13 to 2745. Inside, they found a black laptop with the same spider symbol as the business card. Nash had kept records of everything, not as insurance, but because he was proud of their perfect crimes. Videos, documents, bank transfers, and most importantly, a list of every member of the Black Widow network. Present moment. You're lying, Victoria hissed, but her hand was shaking now. That safe is impossible to crack. The combination changes every day based on the stock market closing numbers. Tanya finished for her. But numbers talk to me too. Just like the poison in that coffee talked to me. Just like your evil talks to me right now. Victoria's grip tightened on Tanya's shoulder. Then you should know I'm not bluffing. One call from me, and this building's systems go into total meltdown. Everyone still trapped on the upper floors will be locked in as the temperature rises to deadly levels. Make the call, Harrison challenged. The phone lines have been dead for the last 10 minutes. Your tech team is already in custody. And Robert Nash? He smiled grimly. He's been having a very interesting conversation with the FBI for the past hour. Victoria's composure cracked completely. Her perfect makeup couldn't hide the fury and fear on her face now. You're all lying. This is some kind of trick. No trick, came a new voice. Robert Nash stepped out of the elevator, flanked by FBI agents. His snake cufflinks were gone, replaced by handcuffs. I made a deal, Victoria. Full confession in exchange for protection. The network is finished. Victoria's grip on her gun loosened for just a second. That was all Tanya needed. She had felt it coming. That moment of weakness. She dropped to the ground and rolled away as Marcus Chen's team moved in. But Victoria had one last desperate move. She spun around and aimed her gun directly at Harrison. If I'm going down, I'm taking you with me. The gunshot echoed through the lobby. Victoria looked confused. Then she looked down at her red suit, now stained with an even darker red spreading from her shoulder. Behind her stood Sarah Williams, holding the security guard's gun she had taken when everyone was focused on Victoria. "Nobody hurts my baby," Sarah said firmly, her hand steady despite her recent ordeal. As Victoria fell to her knees, the gun clattering from her hand, Tanya ran to her mother's arms. FBI agents swarmed the lobby, securing Victoria and reading her rights. Outside, police sirens wailed as more law enforcement arrived. Harrison watched as Victoria was led away in handcuffs, her perfect mask completely shattered. Then he turned to Tanya and Sarah, his face full of gratitude and concern. "It's not quite over," he said quietly. "The network has deep roots. There will be others who might come looking for revenge." Tanya, still holding her mother tightly, looked up at him with determination in her young eyes. "Let them come. My gift will warn us, and this time we'll be ready." But even as she said it, her gift was tingling again. Something told her that Victoria's arrest wasn't the end of their troubles. It was just the beginning of something much bigger. 1 month had passed since the dramatic events at Morgan Towers. The morning sun streamed through the windows of James Harrison's new office, located in a different building across town. The newspapers spread across his desk told the story that had captivated the nation. Black Widow Network exposed. International crime ring brought down by young hero. Justice for billionaire victims. Tanya sat in what had become her special chair by the window, watching the city wake up. She looked different now, more confident, her purple beaded braids replaced with neat cornrows, wearing a new school uniform from the prestigious academy she now attended thanks to Harrison's generosity. The last member of Victoria's inner circle was arrested in Switzerland this morning, Harrison announced, putting down his phone. That makes 37 arrests across 12 countries. The network is finished. Tanya nodded, but her gift told her there was more to discuss. "What about the families of the other men who were killed? The ones before you?" Harrison smiled warmly. "Thanks to the evidence we found on Nash's laptop, we've recovered most of the stolen money. The families will get everything back." He paused, then added, "And the Harrison Foundation has set up a special fund to help them too." Sarah Williams entered the office, no longer wearing a cleaner's uniform. She now worked as the Foundation's community outreach director, helping other families affected by similar crimes. "The support group meets today," she reminded Harrison. 5 more families are joining. They need to hear our story, need to know they're not alone." Harrison nodded, then turned back to Tanya. "Which reminds me, we have something important to discuss." He pulled out a sleek folder with the Harrison Foundation logo. "We're starting a new program. A special school for gifted children like you." Tanya sat up straighter. "Like me? You mean?" "Yes," Harrison said. "Since your story went public, we found others. Children who can sense things, know things they shouldn't be able to know. Some saved their families from fires before they started. Others knew about earthquakes before they hit. They all have gifts, like yours. But they're scared and confused," Sarah added, putting a hand on her daughter's shoulder. "They need someone who understands. Someone who can teach them how to use their gifts safely." Tanya looked at the folder. Inside were plans for a beautiful campus, with modern buildings and green gardens. The school would be called the Williams Harrison Academy for Gifted Youth. "We want you to help us design the program," Harrison explained. "You'll be our first student advisor. Your experience can help us protect and guide other gifted children." Tears filled Tanya's eyes, but they were happy tears. "Like a safe place? Where kids like me don't have to hide." "Exactly," Harrison smiled. And there's more. Victoria and Nash's testimonies helped us identify corrupt people in many big companies. We're creating a network of our own, one that protects people instead of hurting them. Your gift could help us spot danger before it strikes. But only if you want to, Sarah quickly added. You've done more than enough already. You can just be a normal student if that's what you prefer. Tanya stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the city. Her gift had always felt like a heavy responsibility, sometimes even a burden. But now she understood. It wasn't just about sensing bad things. It was about making good things happen. I want to help, she said firmly. But I have one condition. Harrison raised an eyebrow. What's that? The school needs a really good security system, Tanya said with a small smile, and Officer Martinez should be in charge of it. Harrison laughed. Already done. He starts next week as head of security. As if on cue, Martinez appeared at the door, now wearing a new uniform with the academy's logo. The first families are arriving for orientation, he reported. And Tanya, there's a girl your age out there. Says she knew you were waiting to meet her. Tanya's gift tingled, but this time it wasn't warning of danger. It was telling her she was about to meet someone special, another gifted child who would become a close friend. As she followed Martinez out to meet the new arrivals, Tanya felt truly happy. Her gift had led her through darkness to find her true purpose. She had helped bring down the Black Widow network, but more importantly, she had helped create something new and wonderful. Justice had been served, and now it was time to build a better future, not just for her, but for all the gifted children who would no longer have to face their challenges alone.